I've had myalgic encephalomyelitis or chronic fatigue syndrome, or MECFS for short, for 30 years. And my initial experience was that after a week or so of having a bad flu, rather than getting well, I just became more unwell, and then very quickly became bedbound. I couldn't walk, sit up, sleep, eat without help, talk or roll over in bed. My head felt like it was stuffed with cotton wool, and I found it really hard to think. I was sensitive to light and sound. Sound actually felt physically painful, and I found it hard to tolerate certain foods and medicines. My body would get quite violent, shaking for hours, and just turning over in bed or speaking worsened all my symptoms. I had been a registered nurse for a few years, but I hadn't come across any illness like this. I was totally unprepared for the severity of the illness and for the myriad of symptoms. I had never heard of MECFS. I hadn't come across it in my training. And the illness that I experienced was something that would have been what I expected to see a patient with perhaps terminal cancer experiencing in the last 2 weeks before they died. As I went through my journey, excuse me, and observed what so many others with MECFS were going through, because you get to know other people in the community with it. I was just horrified at what was happening. I couldn't believe what I was seeing happening. And sometimes if you want to see change, you have to be part of that change. You have to be prepared to do something. And I became so aware of the gaps in getting any medical help. There are many wonderful doctors out there whose whole focus is helping their patients. These are good people that have come in. They're professionals, and they're there because they want to help, and they sincerely want to help their patients. They just don't have the right tools at the moment.
I don't know, and I have met hundreds, possibly even now thousands, of people with MECFS, and I don't know a single person who wants to be sick. We all had lives, we had careers, we have families to raise, or potentially even to actually have families. Some people have missed out on that, including myself. We've lost income, we've lost relationships, and I don't know a single person who wants to live this life. It is horrific.
The foundational principle of safe treatment is pacing and preventing post-exertional malaise. If nothing else, that's the basis of it. Pacing is the complete opposite of pushing through. And it's a conscious self-management strategy where you learn to live within your energy budget or your energy envelope to avoid triggering it.
And I think it's important to recognize that we're constantly assessing and conserving energy, and everything that we all did when we were healthy without thinking, that all requires this careful consideration. So there's no more spontaneity, there's no more carefree fun. We are constantly doing like arithmetic. How much energy is this going to take from me? How much do I need left over to function? How much rest am I going to need just to do this? And that's just for basic things like sitting up in bed, getting out of bed, going to a toilet, showering. It's absolutely amazing how much showering can take out of you, and that's just a basic thing that, people who are healthy just don't even think about. They just get up, they go to the shower, do some exercise, have breakfast, all that kind of stuff. And everything for us is constant assessment. Can I do this today?
We need them to understand that this isn't going away. That since COVID, the numbers have been rising. and they continue to rise, and that ignoring them isn't going to do anything about them. Isn't going to make that go away or change. We just need them to understand the devastating cost of inaction. They just can't keep doing nothing. MECFS rates in the lowest 10% on the promised physical functioning scale. That's lower than some of those other more recognised serious illnesses such as MS and Parkinson's disease. That's how very debilitated these people are. It's a national health crisis that's hiding in plain sight. CFS affects children, it affects adults, it affects every ethnicity and gender. No one's immune.
I think this severe ME day, ANZMES is wanting and demanding, frankly, urgent and systemic change, right? Not just raising awareness. We need our country's leaders to actually understand the systemic neglect of people with MECFS. And that has this immense human cost. It has an economic cost. And that inaction that you mentioned before is a continued failure of our duty of care to a very vulnerable population.
Well, New Zealand is lagging behind other countries such as Germany, the UK, and Australia in relation to MECFS care and education. That's just for a start. Some have cross-party politicians actively calling for change and working towards solutions, and we need that in New Zealand. We need them to mandate MECFS education for all healthcare professionals, to ensure safe evidence-based practice across the country. It should be a standard, and this would be a huge start to preventing harm and reducing the long-term burden on the healthcare system. I mean, it's a no-brainer. This is where we should start. And we must formally include MECFS in all national disability support policies and frameworks as recommended by the UN. These are our most vulnerable citizens. They're so sick and they're being failed by this systemic neglect. There's got to be a commitment to significant ongoing biomedical research to find effective treatments and ultimately a cure. I mean, we all want a cure. So we're not going to find it unless we get funding to do the research to do that. We have world-class scientists in New Zealand looking at MECFS. Their work needs funding.